Hey everybody, and welcome to IndieQuest, the celebration of the indie and obscure. Your podcast all about the wonderful world of indie video games. I'm one of your hosts, Josh, and I'm here with one of my stellar co-hosts, Steve. How's it going, man?
It's going pretty good. Assuming you're hearing this and the audio has held up all the way to post, it's going pretty good. Yeah, Audacity's trying to fight me, but I'm going to fight back even harder because I want to talk to you about a very good video game today. So thanks for asking.
I'm also joined by the captain himself, Captain Drachma. How's it going, man?
Good. I'm also having technical issues. I hope my mic holds out. If the podcast suddenly gets better halfway through, that probably means my mic died. So, but we are also joined by a very special guest, the one and only Podfather himself, Mr. Travis Terry. How are you doing?
I'm here on episode 69. Wow, yeah! It does feel good to be here, guys. I appreciate it. You ignoring all of my pleas to be on here for a couple years hardened my spirits, made me feel like I wasn't loved. I didn't know you were saving the best for me. And now I'm elated. I'm excited to be here to talk about my meat, talk about y'all's meat, talk about our meat together. This is going to be a good time.
Let's meet it up. Let's do it. Trav, where would people know you from? We have a bad habit. I'm going to call myself out here. Bad habit of bringing people on and being like, and our guest, Jason. And everyone's like, who the hell is Jason? So, Trav, why do people know you? Or why should they know you?
Yeah, if you have, if you bring up like local perverts in your area, I might show up there. I'm also into podcasts. I don't really listen to them. I think they're kind of boring, but I do several here on the Polymedia Network. I have chest hair. You might know me from that. And I do a little stand-up comedy. So I've got it all rounded out, guys.
It's true.
Do a little
He's
bit
a
of everything
headliner,
around
people.
here.
All right. This guy's headlining shows.
Yeah. I have been doing that. I've done it twice. It's been fun.
Yeah, proud of you. And
I had a question for Travis. Okay, so one thing I actually want to start doing when we bring guests on for the first time is ask an age-old question. What's your favorite indie video game?
We're here. We're talking about it right now. This is the one.
This is the one. So
this is it.
That's why you're here. So
as far as
awesome.
I'm concerned, this is the only indie video game. I thought when you guys put this podcast together, I'm like, they're just going to talk about Meat Boy over and over again? That's not going to be a good podcast, guys. Shame on me, though. I didn't know.
Duked on the chest of Firewatch. Doesn't even care about it.
I know. I was going to say the exact same thing. Trav plays games, but also hates Firewatch, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it's true. All right. Well,
I mean, I do like Firewatch, but, who knows who made that game? That game, it could have just appeared out of nowhere. Who knows? I had to watch a whole documentary about Super Meat Boy before I was like, oh, that's an indie game. Okay.
Who wants to do the rundown of Super Meat Boy?
Oh, man.
You want to take it, Steve?
Okay, let me bring us in. All right.
Yeah.
That was incredible. All right, we brought Trav on today, episode 69, to talk about a very special game to him, to me, to all of us, Super Meat Boy. This is one of the games that we've been threatening to do for a long time, right? Like there's like 5 or 10 that we keep in the pocket where we're like, at some point we're gonna jam one of these down your throat. For a long time, Journey was one of those, and then we did a special Journey app. Now we got Super Meat Boy. So every time we reference Super Meat Boy in every single platformer that we ever bring to the quest log, you'll now have an episode of context. So, to give you an overview, if somehow you found your way to this podcast, the Super Meat Boy episode of IndieQuest in 2023, 13 years after the game came out, and you're asking the question, what is Super Meat Boy? Well, first off, you live a very different life from me, and I would like to have probably your taste in games because you seem a little more cultured than I am. But for folks that don't know, Super Meat Boy was developed by Team Meat, which is really it's primarily 2 dudes. I'm sure other people like chipped in little bits here and there, but it's primarily Edmund McMillan and Tommy, is it Reffinez?
Yeah, I think it's Reffinez.
Reffinez? Something like that. I think Tommy Reffinez.
Yeah.
And again,
Raffinis?
Yeah. Yeah,
about to move
I think it's
on.
Ruffini's. All right.
Can we all do it differently?
Hey.
Just-
You're more of a refin. I'm doing refinies all the rest of the episode. So whatever
So
you
it's
guys want to do.
Edmund and Tommy, and they released a video game October 20th, 2010, self-published. It was a successor to a Flash game that came out in 2008, developed by the same folks, which was kind of like a thing back in that early-ish Xbox Live era. I feel like a lot of the like first or second generation like big hit indies started as Flash games or started on Newgrounds or something and ended up like polishing that up and breaking more into the mainstream. I guess it's because like those were like the hyper indie guys, the guys that were just developing games purely for the passion of it with no attempt to monetize. They were like the ones best poised, had the right skill set to get in early. So it has, since it came out, I would say garnered quite the reputation. And I will bias this podcast by saying for a long time, I called it my favorite video game ever. So I'm very excited that we're talking about it.
I'm interested to know, was it Outer Wilds that pushed that down, or was it something more recent, or is it further down the list? I assume you're going to talk about your favorite video games of all time at some point on a different platform, maybe, or a different.
Yeah.
Hold up. What year did you play Trevor McFur?
Yeah, this was definitely pre-Trevor McFur, for sure. Yeah,
Pre-Fur?
pre-Fur.
Okay. Back in the bald days. That's what we call him. It's just slick meat before you got that McFur.
Captain, to answer your question, I think it was Chrono Trigger that I eventually. It wasn't like I played Chrono Trigger and that bumped it out. It was just kind of like a come to Jesus situation. I fought back and forth for a long time, and then Outer Wilds came out and just settled the argument. So it doesn't matter anymore.
Okay, I got you. That's cool.
So, Travis, you're the guest here. What is your first impression of this game, and have you played it recently? And like, what brought you to this game, etc.
Yeah, I haven't played it recently. I wanted to in preparation for this, but I've played it enough that I basically could play it through my mind when I was thinking about what I might say on this podcast, right? It's in my DNA at this point. I mean, I even have a little 3D meat I brought to the show just to show off. And for those of you at home, no, I didn't just pull down my pants. I have a little 3D printed Super Meat Boy.
That's for top of the show. I'm excited.
Yeah. Yep. The top and shaft of the show. So, yeah, I would say I'm a lot like Steve. I thought that this game was probably my favorite game for a long time. It's been, superseded a bit since, but my first impressions of it were... So I think my introduction to it was maybe a little different than most in that I was at someone's party. I was at a guy's house at this party. Some of you may know him, Tim. These video geddons that we've talked about. It's a big lore thing amongst a lot of the polykill community there. And he had this... He has like an old 360 and an arcade machine. So Super Meat Boy is hooked up to an arcade machine with working joysticks and buttons. And I'd never seen it before. And I walk up to it, and I don't know that to me, it could have just been an arcade game. I didn't know that it was an indie game. I didn't know that it was on consoles. I didn't know there was an Xbox in there. I didn't really know much. I just walked in there and was like, what's this? Somebody had been playing it and walked away from it. So it was like in some of the later levels, like I think the Hell level was already there waiting for me when I pull up. And the music he's got it blasted because music that's an attract mode for that game. You hear that music, you're like, what's going on over here? Is there like a full concert happening? And I hop on that thing and I play, enough to realize that it's way too advanced. Like I've stepped into like hard, but I keep at it because it's like the reward of the restarts so fast is awesome. I'm seeing my blood go everywhere. I'm like, that's cool. I finally beat a stage and I see all the replays. I'm like, what is this game? This is insane. And I stay on it for like an hour and a half until people come up like, oh, so you're playing that Meat Boy. And I don't think that that's the name of the game right off the bat. I'm like, yeah, it's whatever this is, right? He does look like a Meat Boy. They're like, no, that's the name of the game, bud. Like, really? So my introduction to it was a little weird in that I felt like I walked into like a car accident and loved it. Yeah. It was awesome.
That's incredible. You're kind of the person that I was insulting at the top of the show. Like you got a good chunk of the way through your life not knowing what the hell Super Meat Boy was.
I mean, this was like the game hadn't been out long. Mm-hmm. It was in the waking weeks of the game, okay. But it was still, an eye-opening experience where I was like, okay, so can I get this do I have to buy this whole machine? It's like, no, you just download it off Xbox. I was like, get the fuck, really? So what a treat that was to realize I could play it at home. But I did notice, and we can get into this later when we get to maybe play style controls or whatever. But because my first experience with it was on the arcade with arcade, the joystick and the buttons, playing it on a controller was very different. Where I feel like I sacrificed a lot of that finite, precise control that you could experience with the arcade sticks with the controller, to the point that made my hands cramp, because I'm the kind of person I will squeeze a controller like I'm clinging to life. Even if it's not a stressful situation, I squeeze pretty hard. You can hear the plastic creak. And Meat Boy is not a game that you want to endure hours of squeezing on. So I actually got a USB arcade fight sticks for my 360 just for Super Meat Boy, to play it like I had originally encountered in the wild.
I still need to play it like that at some point. I'm looking forward to it.
It's awesome.
For an episode like this, I think it's actually probably helpful for all of us to kind of go into our history with the game in general. So now, I'm going to call on Seth because I think it's easy. You played it hot and fresh for this episode, right?
Last week. Yep.
How much context did you have for the game before you went in? Like, was its reputation big enough for you to kind of like feel like you'd already played it a little bit before you did, or was it all entirely new?
I don't know that I had seen a lot of gameplay footage of it. I'm sure that I'd stumbled upon it at some point, right? In best indie games of all times lists and things like that, or best platformers of the 2010s, right? Or whatever. I'm sure that I've seen it, but for the most part, I went in about as fresh as anybody can in 2023, I think.
I'm glad to have your perspective on this episode in particular. Josh, do you remember when you first played it, or what your history with it is?
And I went to college for a year. I know. Yeah. But anyway, in college, my roommate had an Xbox 360 and I played it on his 360 originally. It was kind of one of the things where we're passing the controller back and forth. So I didn't play it all the way through until I played it on PS3, which is years later, obviously. And they took out the really good soundtrack and put a different soundtrack, which is still good, but not as good on the PS3. So that was unfortunate, but I played a good handful of the Steam version. I think I got all the way up to the last area again this time. But I've played this game multiple times with different friends, and it's just a classic to me. And just thinking back to it, it's like one of those things where I can see the inspiration in a lot of newer indie games. They just all go back to Super Meat Boy, like Celeste and etc. So.
Yeah, it's kind of like there are certain games that put their flag in the ground. Like Portal is one of those where any puzzle game that comes out that has any sort of like spatial mechanic, they're gonna be like, it's kind of Portal-esque, and this is
Portal-y.
That's what this is too. So all right, that's cool. I played it, I'm pretty sure on release. I was looking forward to it. It was cool because at the time, this wasn't like the first big game, but for folks that weren't there, it was interesting to be in like the budding years of Xbox Live Arcade, because that's like pre-Steam being anything other than like just a way to play Counter-Strike. So there wasn't like a huge digital marketplace. And so it was the early years, and a lot of the stuff that got released on digital services really were like kind of small, kind of janky. Like these days, an indie game or something that releases on any digital platform, it's just a video game. They all like, they're indistinguishable from one another in terms of like scale, scope, potential, things like that. But back then it felt like Super Meat Boy was like doing something that others were not, as like, oh, this is like actually like a full game that's coming out. And so I picked it up right away. I immediately got obsessed with it. I'm very, I think it comes from me being really into rhythm games. I like games where it's difficult to execute, but if you practice, eventually it gets kind of easy and it looks really cool and impressive to people that watch. Where it's like, once you're half decent at Guitar Hero and can play most expert songs, a normie is going to be like, bruh, what? You must be like so good. And you're like, actually, amongst people that are good at this game, I'm one of the worst, but I appreciate that you think that. And Super Meat Boy was the same way, where I was like, I look pretty good. So played it, loved it then. Again, it became one of my favorite games. And then a couple years later, it actually was the first game that I ever learned how to speed run. Although this was before speedrun.com, so my time I don't think exists on their leaderboard. But for a while I was doing that thing. It was I might have been the first thing I streamed ever. Were some Super Meat Boy speedruns back in like 2013, 2014. But yeah, big fan.
So,
good game.
How does a Super Meat Boy speedrun look? I assume there are different varieties, but are you going all the way through from game start, 0%, and then just try to go through all of the light world, or you're doing everything and then doing everything again in the dark world, or how does that work?
As with
I'm
most
just interested.
As with most speedruns, it's any of the above.
Oh, okay.
So like a typical any percent speedrun when I was doing it was you start from a fresh file and it's just race to the very end. To get to the end, I believe you have to do 16 of the 20 levels in any given world.
Yeah, 17.
So there's some like strategy in determining what the longest levels are that you can skip and whether or not it's worth it to go back to the menu, stuff like that. But yeah, it's just getting through to the end of the end. And at the time, it was about a 20-minute run or so.
Jeez.
So it's when you're very familiar with the game, you can cruise through it pretty fast. Most levels take like 5 seconds. So
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Very fun, very approachable speedrun. I recommend people check it out if you're ever looking to speedrun something that has a lot of room for improvement, but isn't as bad as you might think.
Well, I'm really curious. Seth, this is the first time you've played this game. Of course, it's like a legendary game. You've probably heard millions of people talk about it at this point. So how did it fare in like a fresh 2023 playthrough for you?
I thought it was really fun. I enjoy the occasional frustrating, challenging game. So I suppose that fit the bill for me in terms of like what I'm playing often. I will say, I don't know. I found it fairly frictionless for like the first 2 worlds.
Yeah.
And then it started to ramp up in World 3. And then I think Hell is World 4. And then the end is World 5. And the end is only 5 stages, right, within that world. And that is where it gets like real hard. That is where the curses started coming out of my mouth. And I had to look around to make sure. Because it does not pull any punches towards the end. Because I was cruising through the beginning of the game and into the mid game, and I'm like, I mean, this game's it's tough. I'm dying here and there, but it really ramps up towards the end. And I kind of shared it with Trav. I'm sorry, I did not share it with you, but I shared it with the other IndieQuest boys. That how many people, at least on Steam, have apparently beaten this game. And I'm sure a lot of people have bought this game and played it for 15 minutes because they got it on sale for like $1 at some point. But it's at like 6.7% just beaten at all, which is pretty insane. It's not even that long of a game. Mm-hmm. It's just, it's a tough, and maybe this gets us into some gameplay stuff, but it is a very hard game for just your average gamer.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised it is that low because when you look up, I think the other like obvious comparison point for difficult games, it's not an indie, but the obvious comparison point is Dark Souls or any of the Souls games is like the difficult game that people push through. And if you look up like trophy data on a Souls game, it's actually surprising like how many people play through and like fight every boss. Like they have a reputation for being hard, but like a third of everyone that plays it will get all the way through or something. So Super Meat Boy, I think it was an easier game, but I don't know if that's just like an economy of scale at work, or maybe it just is. Maybe I'm too close to the situation. I no longer know how difficult Meat Boy is or not.
Well,
I think economy of scale is a good point because, I mean, it was a downloadable game that was, in the Xbox Live Arcade forever and never sequestered to like a single system for too long. So I feel like it's probably owned through Steam and through other avenues by a lot more people.
Yeah.
And probably more casual people that were like, what's this meat thing? Yeah, I feel like if you're getting into a Souls game, you kind of know what you're getting into most of the time before you purchase it.
And that's the interesting thing about Meat Boy, too. At least for Steam achievements, I have beaten the game. There are like 45 achievements or something like that, if I'm remembering correctly. And I have 2 of them.
They are some of the hardest, assuming that they're the same as the trophies, they're some of the hardest achievements to get like full stop, because you have to beat every world and every dark world without dying to get achievements. Yeah. So it's like, I've been trying for years and years to get all those, and I still have like 6 of them that I haven't gotten.
Yeah. But with that, so that we're getting into that. What do you do in Meat Boy? Josh, do you want to kick us off on what we do in Meat Boy?
Yeah,
what do you do with your meat, Josh?
I like to hold B and just like run really fast. So, yeah,
same.
So, pretty much every stage is it's a platformer. You play a little tiny red square of meat that splatters around the stages. You avoid obstacles like laser beams, pitfalls, mounds of needles, just normal stuff. And you try to get to the other side of the room. The stages are usually pretty short, like the captain was saying. We got maybe 5 to 10 seconds per stage if you're good. You're basically jumping around and trying to get to the other side. And if you die, you repeat that stage over and over again until you master that stage. And you just keep going through all the stages. And then there's boss stages that are a little bit longer. They're usually like you're being chased by a mech, or, running from a place being filled with salt and things like that. And, it's a really interesting and fun little game. So, do you guys, my question for you guys for the controls, do you hold down B and then hit A to jump, or do you use the shoulder button?
I held down B because I think that's the way it was originally mapped, but maybe there was a shoulder button option. I just didn't know it. I found that for the most part, 95% of the time I was holding down B like I was playing Mario or something. But there were certain instances where I would intentionally let go of B because your jump has a different trajectory when you don't use it. And I felt like there were certain times where it's like, I don't know why I cannot succeed at this challenge, at this level. Like I just it just doesn't seem possible. And then you just have to retrain your brain and be like, okay, Meat Boy actually has 2 speeds, right? So you have to kind of play this game knowing that you got more tools in the old toolbox than just press B and run to the right. So
I think that's where the fight sticks come in handy too, in that it's a little easier to manipulate your jump in the air with having the stick, kind of mapped with your wrist, as opposed to full thumbing that thing around, where you can really fine tune the jump in midair. So I think it maybe even allows you to continuously hold down jump and still slow yourself down in the air, sort of with some finesse. But yeah, I don't know how I would play it with the controller, but I definitely have the turbo button just taped down when I play it with the fight sticks.
I used A and B the whole time because I felt like the shoulder buttons. Is it the triggers or the buttons?
It's actually the right trigger, and the reason I actually used it a bit in this one is I was playing it on the Steam Deck, and I just felt the controls felt a little better to grip the little handheld like that. The B and A button worked, but I was like, this actually works pretty good with that specific control set, But I always used A and B before, but I'm just curious if you guys ever tried it.
It was because I played it on the 360. The triggers on the 360 are very they've got like a lot of movement, and it's not exactly clear where in the press the action happens. And so I felt like it would be a little bit less precise for me to use. Plus, I definitely remember holding down, I think it was X on the 360 controller to run, and then A to jump. Right. Because after I played it for 100 hours, I still have the controller, a 360 controller, but my X button is all gummed up and sticky because I sweat a bunch of meat sauce down into that button in particular.
Oh, yeah. Squeezing and sweating. Yeah. Ugh. Meat gets intense.
It does. I am interested, though, Trav. You said you use, for this game, almost exclusively, a joystick to move, right? That's what you're saying. Did the other 2 of you use your joystick on your controller or the D-pad?
D-pad, 100%.
Okay. Yeah, me too. I was like, wow, that's That's why I can't imagine playing a platformer like this and not D-padding it. Like every once in a while, my thumb would slip over to the joystick. I'm like, let's see how this feels. And it was terrible. And I immediately went back to the D-pad. So
I've used both. Like, I'm not going to lie. I can do pretty okay, but this game needs that quick left and right. Like, and you're not going to get that with the joystick. So
I will say, I know there are other characters that you can play as because the achievements tell me so, but I only ever used Meat Boy. It takes a little bit of learning to understand how Meat Boy moves and some of the physics and slipperiness of Meat Boy. Like, sometimes I really, no matter how good I felt like I got at the game, I would still be like, I feel like some of this is just RNG luck. I can't get this down, right? And then finally you do it and realize it was your fault the whole time. But he's just ultra slippery and floaty, and it takes a while to kind of understand.
Yeah, very much. That is true for all the other characters. So for folks that haven't played it, you play through, like Josh was saying, short individual levels, very difficult to get through them, lots of obstacles in your way. It is very much a game designed around you're going to die 10, 20, 30 times in a level before you like get the one run. And when you do, they'll give you like the very famous death cam that shows every single run you've ever done simultaneously, and so you can see all the spots where you died 20, 30 times, and then all the the handful of runs where you got a little further and hit the next saw blade, and then the one or two runs that got close.
And those some runs where you're like, what was I even thinking there? Like that one piece of meat just flying in reverse. Like, what was, I don't even remember doing
that one run where you're like, oh, that's one where I set the controller down and went and got a sandwich and came back. Why is he just standing there?
Yeah, your guy's just sitting there the whole time, not even...
My favorite replays were when I was trying to get an A+, which we haven't talked about, right? I guess I'll just mention it here. We're talking about it. So an A+, you can get an A+ for every level, and that is a specific time, right? So you basically have to speed run that level up to the game's curriculum or whatever. They say get 6 seconds. If you get under 6 seconds, you get an A+ for that level. So talking about the death animations, sometimes I would miss the first jump, just goof it. And then my favorite when I was watching the replays was just me, like 7 different Meat Boys missing that first jump and then just jumping over the edge and killing myself because I knew I wasn't going to get that one. So I just would kill myself and restart.
Yep, exactly. So it's you mentioned the A+, and that's good because that brings us into kind of the dark world. So the reason to do A+ in this game, or the reasons to go for these par times, is for every level that you get an A+ on, you have the option to flip into what's called the Dark World, which is like a remixed, harder version of the world that you were just in. And so for every level you have A+, you can play the Dark World version of that stage. Have you guys all gone through and done Dark World stuff at all? Have you messed with it?
Yeah, certainly. I can't recall if... I'm pretty sure I haven't like beat every Dark World stage, but I dabbled, and they are hard.
They are. I like them quite a bit. I remember reading an interview early on where Edmund McMillan was saying that they tuned them so that the dark world, or the dark levels for the first world, would be equivalent in difficulty to about the light levels for World 3. So if you get halfway through the game, that's about the difficulty that the earliest Dark World stages are, which is good because it means that if you're stuck on a particular level as you're playing through the game normally, and you're like, I'm just not doing this, you can go back and hit some Dark World stages, and they're going to be about that same difficulty, give or take a little bit, to like let you reset your brain, try something else, and then you can go back once you're fresh and happy and try to keep making more progress. Mm-hmm. And then of course the later Dark Worlds are just absurdly hard. The like final boss, secret boss, hyper mode difficulty.
Yeah, that's beyond my skill set, but I played the Dark World until fun stopped and it was too hard.
Yeah, it was pretty much at the same. When I first beat this game, it was just, I don't remember how far I got, honestly, but like it was like, okay, yeah, I think I got everything I want out of this game and just moved on at the time. I know, unfortunately, but you know, it is what it is.
Like you hit that one wall and you're like, oh, this is for professionals. Okay.
Yeah, pretty much.
I've passed casual league. I'm good. I'm happy I got this far. I'm out.
This is for Mr. Meat Boy, not Meat Boy Jr.
Yeah,
Right.
Who would play all those? That's crazy.
Yeah. So Steve, that is it's
crazy.
You know, let's
It's for tryhards only.
Let's
right?
tout you here. You said you speed ran it and you went through like how long? Like what was that difficulty wall like for you at the end? Like, is it among some of the hardest stuff you've survived, or is it? Would you say it's like anything else, a little bit of practice and it's no big deal?
It's like everything, a little bit of practice, but like there's no denying that it's hard. I don't want to undersell it. Like some of those levels are brutal, and your first time through them, you're going to spend, in some cases, 45 minutes, an hour on a single level. But I feel like Meat Boy, just in general, is well designed in that with experience, layers of difficulty start to peel away, and what previously seemed like it was almost impossible to do, like kind of becomes like your baseline guarantee. Oh, I can definitely do that. So throw something a little harder at me. Then you learn to do that, and you're like, oh, I can definitely do that now. And so by the end, you're like, it feels incremental. I think it's very well designed in that way.
I think the design is spectacular when you consider it really was just those two guys, and they even only tested it really amongst themselves and maybe a friend or two here and there. It didn't go through any rigorous play testing. And to be able to make a game that requires that much precision, and the designs themselves are just awesome. Like, they're very creative. They make there's not a lot of mechanics. It really is, a direct inspiration of Super Mario Brothers. They even borrowed the same initials for that reason. So there's only so much you can do, and they get the most out of all of it, whether it's, tailoring your jumps in midair or being able to slide between something at a certain time or using a wall jump just so. Like, they make the most out of that as the game goes on. And I just found that, like, to be the most spectacular part of it all, where you watch this documentary, and we haven't even really referenced it yet, but Indie Game, the movie, where they talk about their experience making this game and how much pressure they were under at the end. And it really changed their lives, honestly, for the negative in the last bit before they delivered it. And it's like, well, shit, guys, you killed it, though. I mean, you knocked it out of the park. I don't even know if we needed the Dark World, but you gave it to us anyway, and it was amazing.
We didn't need a bunch of retro levels, a bunch of unlockable hidden characters, all sorts of...
Internets? Those were tough.
Just absurd. But for a game that wants to kill you, it actually has a lot of little things that are working in your favor. Like, it's helping you more than you realize it is, right? Like, the most obvious one of those being that deaths and resets are like a half a second. Like, by the time you're done exploding from death, you're already back on the level. You can watch your death that you just played, or you can skip it like instantly. When you run around, also something that's like kind of subtle or people don't really think about, your Meat Boy leaves like a blood trail on any of the ground or the block or the walls or anything that you've jumped on, which is actually like very beneficial information for you on your next run. Like, if you made a jump successfully and died later in the stage, when you're running, you know exactly where that jump happened because you basically left a breadcrumb trail for yourself to follow next time. Now, eventually you're going to mess up enough times and the whole walls are just going to be completely splattered. But for a hot minute there, you have useful information before the game shames you a little bit.
Yeah,
go ahead, Josh.
Oh, you're good. I do think you bringing up Super Mario Brothers is really like apt for this, because the first stage of this game, you're just literally jumping from one side of the level to the other, and then it just kind of slowly teaches you things like that famous like design document from Super Mario Brothers, where they're like, you jump on the the Goomba, and then you get the 1-up. It's similar to that, where they have this slow little teachings throughout each level until at the end you're just like Steve was saying, you're like a rhythm game. You're feeling like a god. You can just kind of like, I know what I'm doing. Get into it.
Yep.
Yeah. That's another credit to their design, is that they had in their mind the whole time to make a very difficult precision platformer. But you got to do the building blocks of teaching your gamer what to do, and not every game does that. Not every game did that then, but they still managed to fit that in there, even through an indie mold. So I think that not that these guys haven't gotten praise for this, but I think that some of these little fine aspects of the entire experience don't get shouted out enough. But the quick restarts, I think that was like the thing for me. I think that was like one of the best hooks, is because, we've all played, Mario's a great example. You're halfway in a level, you die, you got to go all the way back to the beginning. You only have 3 lives. game ends. You got to start the whole thing over. Now you're kind of out of gas. You're like, oh shit, I don't want to get all the way back to level 6 too. I spent all day getting there. But here in Meat Boy, you die. You're within 2 seconds of where you died immediately. There's no load. It's just bam. And you're like, all right, well, after this level or after a couple more tries, maybe I'll go to bed. But no, it does that thing where you get tricked into just sitting there in front of it for hours on end, getting your meat slapped all over the place, and you love it. You love every second of it.
It's enjoyable. They know. That's why they show you that death cam at the end, right? They want to give you that victory lap. So that after you're exhausted, you finally got through, you're like, all right, I'm calling it here. Then you watch like all the effort you just put in, all stacked on top of each other. The last hour of your life compressed down into 12 seconds, and you're like, damn, I did good. All right, one more. I got one more in me. I can go in there and do that.
Yeah. And the kill cams, I don't know that was done in a game prior to that, like, at least in that way. You know, you always got the kill shot at the end of like a Halo match or something or whatever video game.
I was gonna say, is it a Call of Duty?
Match,
did they borrow it from Modern Warfare at the time? I don't know.
But you didn't get like all your deaths at once. Like if only Mario had the forethought to watch you just die over and over in a level run through, that would have been neat.
Out to watch those, so he took them out.
I know, but I do wonder if it was the first or where they got that inspiration from. Because I mean, again, that was, you know, when I'm thinking back to that night where I discovered this game, I wasn't the only one. There were people standing around me like, oh, what is this? And every time it got to that, we were, you know, cackling, laughing, pointing at all the little dead meat boys, and it was like a big thing that no one had really seen before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the closest comparison I can draw for I thought of them as almost ghost Meat Boys, right? Because I thought of Mario Kart, which is weird to compare it to, but you could always get a ghost of yourself to see if you can beat your previous time. Right? And it's not exactly like that. You can't watch your other Meat Boys as you play, but it was kind of like that, showing you, hey, this is all your failures before, and this is you succeeding in beating all those failures. So it was a very fun gimmick, and especially at the tougher levels when I knew I died lots, I very rarely skipped past it. I would just watch it and be satisfied.
Can't wait to see this. Just a wave of meat crashing.
So do you guys want to talk about the art style? I love Edmund McMullen's like just Super Meat Boy, you know, Binding of Isaac. I just love how gross he gets. I think that's something that I appreciate for his art style. It's like there could be a poop joke in there. There could be some blood splatter. We can talk about stepping on fetuses. You know, he doesn't really care. He just has a very specific vision, which is just a little twisted and demented, which I appreciate.
Yeah, it's very like, he watched Ren and Stimpy, and then every now and again when it does that like close up nasty shot of like a pimple in Ren and Stimpy, he was like, dude, I think I want to dedicate my life to doing that stuff. That's what I'm gonna do. and then just sprinkle a little cartoon in on top of it. So
yeah,
and then the little flash animation interludes to like, they're all references to video games. You know, there's a Castlevania one in there, Mega Man, all sorts of stuff. So I just
Adventures of Lolo.
Yep,
that's no one points that one out, but the NES nerd sees it. I see it.
I just love that. As soon as you push start on this game, it just screams at you, Super Meat Boy. It has a loud, huge red, black colors just in your face. You know, it's just just meat directly in your face. You know,
it does have one of the great startup screens.
You point out that like that aesthetic, like the blood and the meat and the fetus and sort of all these gross things, but it really lends itself well to a memorable sound design. The meat schlock. Is a huge part of the game. Without the meat schlock, you know, what are we talking about? I don't even want to play. If you took the sound effects, I don't even want to play the game anymore. Get it out of here. Get it out of my face. But also, too, I mean, that's an attract mode, too. That's, you know, in the modern day of, you know, I think arcades and that's the way I experienced it. But just like if you're scrolling through like an eShop of games and you see that, is that going to stand out to you? Are you going to at least, even if you see it as a joke and you're not specifically interested, it's going to catch your attention. You know, we're all a little bit drawn to the low-hanging fruit of comedy and aesthetics, so give me a bare piece of meat. I'll click on it, you know. And if it's fun, bonus.
Yeah. I think that I didn't really talk about this before, but a lot of that artistic style and the general direction that Meat Boy goes in, I obviously recently played it and did not have any experience with it over the last several 10 plus years, but Meat Boy and its style is often incorporated into other indie games. I don't know if you guys, there's always like a Meat Boy Easter egg in so many indie games. So there's lots of different weapons and stuff in Gungeon, and I love Gungeon, right, that are related to Meat Boy. But it just seems like Meat Boy is always that character that's like, I'm gonna throw a Meat Boy in here. I'm gonna throw a Shovel Knight in here, right? So anybody that plays that hasn't directly experienced Meat Boy knows about Meat Boy and knows about that style and everything. So really cool.
Yeah, man, that Shovel Knight guy, you give him $20, he'll show up to your birthday party. He doesn't care.
Seriously.
Dude. Yeah.
He is all over the damn place.
Yep.
Man, he's like the Gary Kitchen of game mascots. He'll just throw his name anywhere.
He doesn't care at all. And for folks that somehow, like, again, haven't seen it, it is definitely born of those like Flash game roots. There's like a certain vibe to like mid 2000s, like, I don't know, comedy, like the type of kids that were wearing like big baggy jeans with wallet chains and listening to Slipknot had a certain sense of humor when they went on the internet. And this is like 100% a flower born of that soil.
Did you read my Tumblr about this? That was like note for note. You hit me.
You're
perfect.
good enough at comedy now where I just steal your experiences and your jokes.
Come on.
But the final product here, I think, is like more palatable to like a wide audience. It does feel like maybe Edmund did like everything he wanted to do, but then, took out some of the rough edges so that you maybe would be okay showing it to your mom. And that's what you get.
He did specifically said, I was watching an interview a couple days ago. Actually, you should watch the No Clip interview. That's going through his entire series of like everything he's ever made. It's a really good interview. I was watching that the other day, just kind of preparing for this. And he was talking about how when he submitted it, he didn't want it to be a rated M game. He wanted it to be, a teen game. So he's like, oh my God, I don't know what they're going to think. I put in the notes that, we stepped on a fetus and red mist came out. He didn't put blood in it. And the thing that came back to him is there's a poop character that farts, right? He's like, how long is the fart? That's the only question they got. That was the line between a rated M game and not rated M game is this, how long is the fart? So
wait, what's the threshold? How long is an M fart? What's an M rated fart?
He didn't say, but I was just like,
secrets. They won't tell you.
They won't tell you? I'm going to Google it. But y'all keep talking.
Yeah, no, that is...
Or don't. Just wait for me to Google how long is an M-rated fart.
What's the answer?
I bet it doesn't. I bet there's no...
No, the answer is it's contextual.
Well, I tell you what I did find, though. There's a website on the Wolfram cloud, Wolfram being like the big, online calculator fancy thing. There's a fart calculator, and there's a formula for how funny a fart is. So you work out that value for any fart. You put in the intensity, the length of the fart, rate whether or not there was social embarrassment, whether there were kids present, and it'll tell you how funny it was.
It's dangerous for your set, man.
Seriously.
I know. I can't get beat out by an online calculator. I got to be funnier than this.
But yeah, all in all, I don't know, man. It just looks good. Now, I mean, it does look a little bit like a game that came out 13 years ago, but like it's still... all in all, I think looks solid today. Like, it's got an aesthetic that is a little bit timeless in just that, like, it was already kind of going for a retro-ish vibe. Yeah. It wasn't trying to do anything fancy. There's no like shaders or anything wild like that. So it'll always look solid.
Being the only person here who played it recently for the first time, this will probably make you all feel old, but I found the Flash appearance of Super Meat Boy to be nostalgic. So,
no, I agree.
We're at about that time, right? Like the Flash game is again, it's like 15 years ago. It was in its heyday, so you're allowed to be nostalgic about things. And in your case, that's just about 5 years shy of your entire life. So,
I was basically playing a retro game when I played Super Meat Boy. So,
it's true.
That's how
it
old
is a
this
retro
indie
game,
game
people.
is.
All right, hold that in your chests. All right, it is retro.
But
inspired.
Well, I think we need to, like, if we're going to talk presentation, let's talk about the soundtrack. Like, that's a banger right
It's
there.
unreal, man. It's so good. It's so good that I'm pretty sure I have remixed charts for every song in the game on my ITG cabinet. Like, when you're playing other games, you want to be listening to Super Meat Boy music.
Is that short for In the Groove for us casual?
Yeah, I should say. See, that's the equivalent of just name dropping Jason, right?
Yeah, right.
I
was like, for the audience, can we spell out what you're
in certain
talking
company
about?
I just lie and call it DDR, even though that's wrong. But that's like that's what people
I've
know.
referred to it as DDR.
It's like calling Rock Band Guitar Hero, where you're like, if you're talking to someone's mom,
it's a very
they'll
grandma
get it.
thing to do.
It's
Like, I wanted that PlayStation for Christmas, and she's like, I got you the Nintendo you wanted.
Yeah,
I'm like,
I
okay,
appreciate
thank
that.
you.
That's
Yeah.
good.
so IT.
But yeah, Danny Baranowski kills it, dude. And it's a real shame, we haven't talked about the demise of Team Meat, but not having him on any of the other, ports that came later or any of the new Meat Boy stuff is a noticeable downgrade for me. And I know the folks that came in to fill in had great resumes. There were some Hotline Miami folks that chipped in on some of the tracks for the other ports and some of the future stuff. And I think it's fine. But Baranowski had just a special sauce, man.
Do we know if that person did the Steam version? Because I had no idea there were multiple. I guess I didn't look into.
Yeah, he did all of them except for the PlayStation 4 and Vita port, I believe. I think that's the only one that has a different soundtrack. So if you play it on like the Wii U, I guess, if you still got a Wii U hanging around, or Xbox or Steam, you're going to be playing with the OG, the awesome soundtrack. So
yeah, I thought it really felt good playing through the levels with that soundtrack. It always fit the platforming, which was great.
It's also interestingly, I don't know, it's like electronic music, but it does not feel like, I don't want to say generic. There's probably a better word for it, but a lot of like indie or like retro inspired games these days, they either have like a really high energy chiptune soundtrack, like a Shovel Knight, or they've got like a real kind of moody synth soundtrack, something like a Citizen Sleeper. But Super Meat Boy is like very like high energy, punchy, electronic, sometimes kind of rock music that isn't like one of those styles that I feel like it's replicated a lot. It sort of stands out even all these years later.
It is a soundtrack that I would certainly put on and listen to, but not when I'm trying to relax. So it's not
it's
OST.
a workout soundtrack
yes,
for sure.
Yes,
yeah.
for sure. Yeah. It would work good for a dancing video game, I suppose. But like I always talk about, it's got a really good soundtrack. I use it while I'm working or whatever, trying to get my head in the right space. Super Meat Boy is not the soundtrack for that, right? It's too upbeat. You're too into it. It's not fun for working.
And again, no shade to the PlayStation soundtrack, but I definitely had that experience where I played the Vita port because I was like, I'll poke at the Vita version. I have it on my handheld. I can lay in bed, play a little Super Meat Boy, and the music started up, and it was like, I don't know, it was like suddenly getting store brand cereal when you were expecting Fruit Loops. It was just like, this is.
It's like I got a good version of this. It's like Aladdin 2. When Genie starts talking and it's not Robin Williams, and you're like, "What the hell?
Yeah.
What is this?"
It is.
You know?
It is the straight to video or straight to VHS soundtrack, right?
Yeah.
Like, it just feels wrong. And I'm sure if that was the first soundtrack I ever heard, I would not think twice about it. But I mean, if I have to pick a favorite, it's definitely Danny B's.
Yeah, Danny B. just knocked it out of the park. Is just for all these things that coalesced into this game. Basically 3 guys with limited time and resources is just. Incredible. And I do listen to the Meat Boy soundtrack while I work. That and like Doom 2016. I get shit done. I don't know what you're doing, Captain. I don't know if you're just trying to snooze at work, but I'm out here. I'm working. I'm sweating.
I like to have like a Zen soundtrack going on, not a upbeat, because then I feel like I get easily distracted. Maybe that's a personal problem, but if there's rock,
They got pills for that.
I probably need to look into that, honestly, but I can't listen to something that's super upbeat, or even something that has lyrics, especially when I'm trying to read. So
yeah, lyrics. Yeah. I can, for sure. I make up my own. We should come back in a future episode with our own lyrics to all the Danny B songs and do a music episode where we just round robin karaoke our own Meat Boy tracks.
The IndieQuest boys and the Dids,
right?
Old diddles.
There you go. Yeah.
Oof. That's a rough collab.
These things just write themselves. Yeah, episodes.
I don't know if you want to hear that from me.
169. Come on, we got time. You got time to work on it. Come on, I'm not saying tomorrow.
How about
Jesus?
Can we compromise on episode 696?
You really don't want me back, do you?
No, I just have a lot of faith in this podcast.
How about we bring it back? We'll bring it back in 2050.
What, you think we won't be around? What are you trying to say?
One of us will be dead, is my guess.
I was going to say the show might exist, but one of us will be dead.
Sure. So yeah, man, soundtrack good.
Sorry, Josh.
Yeah, it's probably going to be me. That's okay.
Yeah. Take good care of yourself, bud.
All right, so I think we've talked about the game. The reputation of the game like precedes itself, right? It's one of those big indie hits. Let's just throw something down here. It was one of the first in its style for the Xbox Live Arcade. It sold 14,000 units by the end of 2010, and that was 3 months of sales. So that was a huge thing that popped off. And then they released it on Steam in April 2011, and by January 3rd, 2012, total sales hit 1 million for this game. So in like a year and a half, it went from nobody knew what Meat Boy was to a million plus sales. So that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that at that time, the audience for that type of game was smaller. Like the marketing engine hadn't spun up in quite the same way on things like Steam. So I think there's inflation in terms of sales numbers, is the same as anything else, where 1 million sales by 2012 is probably, I don't know the math, but it's got to be like a 5 million sale type game these days, right? Like what Sea of Stars just hit 250,000, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's a successful game. Imagine being like 5 times more successful than Sea of Stars. That's like legit juggernaut.
Yeah, and as part of like the development crunch for this game to have it release on the Xbox Live Arcade, they went through basically that last little stanza of hell before they released it, but it ended up that Microsoft didn't even like promote it that hard. And so they really regretted all of the blood, sweat, and tears they put into it at the end at that time because of that. And it took a while before it actually, caught on to get to that million. So, it's one of those things where like you make a masterpiece and it kind of fizzles out. Like what's going through those guys' heads between then and when it actually takes off. And it's like, I don't know. I wouldn't want to have been anywhere near them when they're suffering through the wake of the crunch to find out that it kind of was met with a wheh. But, thank God for word of mouth and like a lot of technology that was coming around at the time and like all these new online communities and the internet. And there's just kind of a perfect storm to get it off the ground. But what if we had never found out about Meat Boy? What if it had just stayed in the bottom of the store and disappeared? And now people would call it or find it and be like, look at this old hidden gem from 2010 I just found. Like, what a sad past that would have been. We'd have had different presidents since. It would have been a different world. It would have been crazy. There'd be 3 Koreas. It would be nuts.
Butterfly effect.
I heard East Korea is pretty cool.
Yeah, I get down on that EK. Yeah.
Okay, let me flip that on you though. We might not be able to answer this question because we're all too old. But do you think Super Meat Boy today has like the reputation that it once did? Is a 19-year-old kid who's like really digging into video games as his hobby going back and playing Super Meat Boy, or is Super Meat Boy like, is it like Rush? Like they're good and they're influential, but they're dad rock and kids these days are not listening to Rush?
I don't know, man. I see some like occasionally a simple game will just take the world by storm. When I mean simple, I just mean like mechanically simple, like a pick up and play game. Think about all the sensations over the year. These are kind of old. I was going to bring up Flappy Bird, but even that's maybe an older example. But I feel like these things happen all the time. to where this game has, I mean, what part of it is really outdated? Like the mechanics are still very sound, the music still seems contemporary, the art style, like the flash animation is, because of the nostalgia that you guys talked about, developers are kind of bringing it back. You see a lot more of that in games. I don't know that you could put this game out there in front of a lot of younger folks and you could tell them it came out yesterday and I think they'd buy it if they weren't wise to that. I don't think they would mind.
My direct comparison, and this will make you all feel really old probably, like it did me. I heard music that I was like, I know what that is. What is that? And I walked over to my stepson to find him tapping the tablet screen. This is just maybe 2-3 months ago. And he was playing Geometry Dash. And so, yes, it can transcend.
Nice.
Right? Super Meat Boy is the same type of thing. Geometry Dash is hard. I don't think I ever made it very far into Geometry Dash back in the day. Just messing around with it on my phone or on the computer. So that's the same type of thing, right? Somebody picks it up for $1. I don't care if you're 12 or 52. I think Super Meat Boy is
All right.
just that pick up and play, and it kind of transcends time.
I can respect that answer. Josh, you hang out with a lot of tweens. What do you think?
Wait, first of all, Josh, defend yourself before.
I don't know what he's referring to.
I've
but
never
that's
seen
okay.
a tween. Hey, what's a?
Don't plead ignorance. Say no.
Quiet down back.
I do
quiet
not
down
hang out
back
with
there.
tweens.
No, for the record, I do not hang out with tweens often. Yeah, I actually do agree with you guys. I think that it's pretty much like it's kind of a perfect video game in my eyes. Like I would call this game a masterpiece. Like you guys were already saying it. I think that anybody who's interested in platformers, if there's a kid like going down like the list and the genre, like, oh, I've played Mario, I've played Yoshi's Island, I've tried a couple of these like older games, and I've tried some more modern like video games, and you said, hey, check out Super Meat Boy, they're gonna have a good time if they're into that style of game. And maybe not if they hate the challenge, but I think that this game does teach you enough in the first couple of worlds to where you can learn it, and it's like it's kind of perfect. So I mean, like Celeste just came out a few years ago. Like that is inspired by Super Meat Boy, right? Like, and that became like is 10 out of 10 IGN. Everybody loved it. It's like the indie hit of the year. So that style of game still works today.
All right, I agree.
So it seems like most of us are digging it. Captain, you're taking in an intake of air. Are you able to like poke holes in it? Is there anything about it that any of us don't like? Can we come up with a weakness?
I mean, I think it's a good game. I think it's a really good game. But
Do we have roasted?
That good is doing some heavy lifting there, buddy.
I
heard that button slide in there. But
I am probably not as high on it as you guys. And it could be for two reasons, right? I don't have this nostalgia for it. I didn't play it 13 years ago. And I was kind of rushing myself to get through it, maybe in not a fun way because of this episode, and that doesn't help.
So you're blaming me?
I am.
Okay.
Well, it's easy to do, Trev, but anyway.
That's fair. Yeah.
Also, I read online how long it took people to beat it, and that's probably never a good thing. So you get onto Reddit or something, and it's like, how long does it take to beat this game? And most people are like, I don't know. It just depends on how good you are, right? But most people said between 10 and 15 hours and stuff like that. I'm like, I'm better. I am better than all of you people. And I will beat it much faster than that. So then when I get to the end, which is what it's called in the game, the end, the last stage, I'm sitting at like 3 hours. I'm like, this game hasn't been that hard. I'm just really good at video games. And it took me, I think I still beat it in considerably less time than maybe the majority of people do, but it took me a while to beat the end. It just took, and I was just beating my head against it. And like I said, did not play it in the most fun way like most people should. Just let it flow through you. The best way that I found to play Meat Boy, we talked about before the show, I was having problems with my lawnmower. Wasn't starting, needed a new battery. So that's a whole thing. I live in the middle of nowhere. I wear boots. So I'm annoyed.
Bullied himself for us.
I'm out there kicking my lawnmower, super mad at it. Come back in the house, play a couple stages of Meat Boy.
Yep.
Go back outside to the lawnmower, come back in the house, play a couple stages of Meat Boy. That is the way to play Meat Boy. To me, not sit down and play it for 5 hours straight, right? Which isn't what I did, but in a generally short time span, I played the game, right? I think it lends itself well to just picking up and playing it for 20 minutes, honestly, every day for the rest of your life, and you would be completely content. Like it's that type of game. Very pick up and play, very fun to just dabble in from time to time.
Man, you did to yourself what my dad did to me to make me not smoke anymore, to just smoke the whole pack and then eat them when I was done. You should have enjoyed it, man. It was pretty good. Take your time. I do wonder if some of those times reflected like some Dark World stuff, because some completionists wouldn't consider Light World enough, right? There might be some of that built into that time you talked about.
Yeah,
but,
it might be.
Yeah. Interesting. I had a lot of fun with, and I was thinking about this as you were talking. I wonder if, because Meat Boy has inspired a lot of games that we've listed, if just this, it's great. It is maybe the first of its kind in a lot of ways, a trendsetter, but now it's a very crowded space for games of this type, and maybe it just doesn't feel that special anymore. But I do remember back when this was hot for a few years after, I would have people over. People would want to come over just to play Meat Boy. It was like an event. Like you got that set up? You cannot come over and play? Can we get a few people come over? We'll just play Meat Boy all night. We would just pass the sticks around and have fun jumping in and out of the special levels and things like that. So it was kind of like an event to play it. And I wouldn't see that ever happening now. Yeah. I still love Meat Boy, but no one's being like, hey, can I come over just to play that one game that costs like $1 on everything? Yeah. Like that's, so I think it's part of it is its time has sort of passed in terms of the whirlwind.
I think probably the most popular modern comparison, which we've mentioned a couple of times, is Celeste. Like Celeste is sort of the modern Super Meat Boy. And the reason a lot of people like Celeste is they connect with like the themes and the message and the story of that game. And then the gameplay is also very good. Meat Boy is like, it's like pre-indie games trying to make you cry era. Like there really isn't a story that is meaningful in any way in Meat Boy. Like there is a story, but like it's 99.9% game, 0.1% story. The story is very clearly like 3 lines in a design doc. That's like a joke and a half that they use to string the levels together. So
yeah,
I think if people are looking for like what they would maybe consider like a more complete package, that's what they'll be missing. And that would be like a gap. Yeah.
Having been somebody who has played them both fairly recently, this will make 2 of you probably sad and 1 of you very happy. I think Celeste is the better game. For me personally.
Crap opinion, but whatever.
I don't know.
The only thing to complain about with Super Meat
one.
Boy is there's a rare but possible glitch where if you press jump, the exact same frame you land on a wall, he slides up it instead of jumping off. And it ruins your speed run when it happens.
But it is fun.
That was kind of my big aha ta-da thing at the end of this episode, as I was going to compare it directly to Celeste.
You're the first one to ever do it. I've never heard anyone say the 2 games together. So this is unique. Tell us again. What was it again? Celeste is better?
This is a Meat Boy episode, and one of them has to be better than the other one. I played both of them not that long ago. And beyond the story beats, because honestly, Celeste's story, it's good, and I totally understand why it resonates with a lot of people. For me, I was more into the gameplay. I'm more of a gameplay person in general. I enjoyed Celeste's gameplay more than Meat Boy as well. And the graphical style and the music. Honestly, I know the music of Meat Boy is really good, but I really like Celeste's music too.
I mean, that is like, okay, Celeste's soundtrack goes so hard. That's like kind of unfair.
Yeah, right.
They're about the same in my heart, but yes.
Well, I know that in the past, Steve has been a Celeste detractor.
I'm not a Celeste. Well, okay, detractor's maybe the right word. The thing with Celeste, which I'm kind of what you're doing to Meat Boy right now, where I give Celeste like a solid 8 out of 10. But since the air is exclusively 10 and 11 out of 10s, people think that I'm absolutely dunking on it. When in reality, I'm like, yeah, it was just great, not exceptional.
Yeah, exactly.
Celeste rules. Go play Celeste too.
Yeah.
What?
All right. Well, we do this thing here on IndieQuest. Are we ready to put it on the quest log? I think it's pretty obvious. Where
I
it's
don't
gonna go,
anymore.
but you don't know anymore? Oh, okay.
Yeah. With
So we do this thing
boo-worms in the room.
on IndieQuest where we're building this list, this ever-growing quest log of our favorite indie games. Bring them on the show. We talk about them. There's two sections, the main quest and the side quest. The main quest is, damn, this is the game. You got to play it. This is the game. You got to play it right now. And it's amazing. It's wonderful. Exceptional. And then the side quest is, this game still rules. But here's a couple caveats to throw your way. Maybe get around to it on your backlog later on. Put it in between, Spider-Man 2 and God of War 5. Whatever. Anyway, is this a main quest or a side quest game for you guys?
I mean, it was literally my favorite game for years. I did my games of the
play it if you want. I don't care.
Yeah, I built a games of the decade list at the end of 2019, and this was like number 2 or number 3 after only like Journey and Outer Wilds. So like, bruh, it's a main quest for me.
So I'm here to have a different opinion than the other guests or the other people on this show right now. But I think that Super Meat Boy is obviously a main quest game. It deserves to go on the main quest. The only thing I will say...
That's the same opinion I have. You can just stop there and we agree.
No. I'm interested...
It's got to be different.
I'm interested in hearing your opinions. I have said in the past, I'll give another example. Downwell is a bare bones game, roguelite, so it's a little bit different, but really hard. And I put it on the side quest because it's so hard. And I thought the majority of people who played that game would probably bounce off of it after a while. They wouldn't just beat their head against the wall to try to beat it. Do any of you share a similar opinion about Meat Boy, where you wouldn't be able to recommend it to the masses in terms of like getting very far and or beating it? Do you have to be a hardcore gamer to play this game?
I don't think that beating it or even getting far has to be like the only way you can enjoy it. Like I've known people that have played it and enjoyed what they got out of it just through some of the other things that we talked about, whether it be the goofy way it presents itself or its soundtrack or whatever. And I've actually convinced people to buy it and play it who definitely had no chance of ever beating it just because they thought it looked cool. So I think it, not to say that difficult games shouldn't, you should always warn someone, but I think this one has enough elements to it that I think it can be enjoyed despite its prickly difficulty.
Yeah, I think you can enjoy it the same way people enjoy like Super Ghouls and Ghosts, right? Most people get like 2 stages in and then never any further, but they still have a good time. Now, the actual way I would have solved your conundrum here is I wouldn't have put Downwell on the side quest. That seems like a separate error in judgment that we shouldn't have. That we should knock Super Meat Boy.
Who invited this guy on the show? Oh, he invited himself on the show. That's right. I forgot about that.
Wow. Travis just coming, just tearing that fourth wall down. So
not even he revived. He was literally the electric shock that revitalized it. So he's a hero.
That is true. That is true.
It's
well,
true.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. Yeah, I'm not mad about it. I just thought, it's whatever. Main quest for me. If I was ever being asked about it, yes, you should definitely play it. What are you doing? If you haven't played it, what the fuck? What have you been doing? Who listens to this show and is like, oh, did you hear about me? I just heard about Meat Boy from this podcast I've been listening to.
This is never going to happen, but I do. There's an imaginary person that I so desperately hope exists that like just played like a game that was eye-opening to them. Like they just played Celeste or they just played Hades and they're like, oh my God, video games are incredible. I'm now going to go play all the video games. And that person is coming to us and saying, just tell me the exact video games I should play. I've played none of them. And to that person, I say, it's a main quest game. So you should probably play Super Meat Boy. There's no world where Fly Wrench is on the main quest and Super Meat Boy is not.
That's because Josh puts everything on the main quest. It's not my fault.
Josh loves that one person.
Hey,
He's like, play all of them, man.
you know what?
I'm kidding, Josh. I'm kidding.
I'm not Josh. I love you.
I mean, I'm pretty fair. I'm overly nice, overly generous, maybe with the quest log. So this one's a side quest for me. No, I'm just kidding. It's a main quest. It's a main quest. I do see your criticisms though, Seth. Like I understand where you're coming from. Like if I had never played this game, I tried it out. I was like, yeah, I see what. Maybe it's not as good as Celeste. Yeah, you're right about that too. Because the thing is, I can go with the Celeste. It's like I can recommend that to anybody because it has accessibility options. You know, like hey, put on like double jumps and make it a little easier if you're. But or you could just be the other side of the coin. Be like, just get good. You know, get good at the game. Right.
I mean, accessibility options are great, but yeah, Super Meat Boy does lack those. I will say so. It was before that. I mean,
it's a great game.
Before that was in the public consciousness.
Yeah, I mean, Celeste. Last comparison, you know, Meat Boy is of its time for sure. It looks like it's from when it was from, and if you're into getting into some of that mid 2000s retroness that a lot of people are into now, then for sure go for it. But Celeste will always be, I guess, more eye appealing probably to most people when you're looking at them side by side. It's like, oh, that game is pretty, and then Meat Boy is meat, right? So if you're into that.
Way more into that.
I mean, some people like Ren and Snippy. Some people like Studio Ghibli. You know, so there you go.
That's true.
They very rarely love both. You ever meet that guy that's like, yeah, I'm into both. One guy's into zits and one guy's into flowers every time.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up our Meat Boy discussion today. It's a main quest game. We're putting on the main quest. I don't think there would be any. I think we would have to like go stop Steve from doing something violent if it got on the side quest. So
yeah, I'd quit this podcast.
And I would like to apologize to Celeste. All right, I didn't mean to have to tear you down to build Super Meat Boy up. Maddie Thorson, are you listening? I apologize. Okay, I'm sorry. Your game is good.
Celeste, Josh, you need to bring Celeste to the quest log already. My gosh.
No.
No one's ever told me that. Not once. So
save it forever, I say.
All right.
Yeah.
I knew a Celeste in high school. She was riddled with cold sores, so no thanks for me. I'll pass.
Anyway, thanks everybody for hanging with us today for our big special classic indie review for Super Meat Boy. To stay up to date, we're doing plugs. I'm just rolling right into it. To stay up to date on the show, follow the podcast at IndieQuest Pod on Twitter. You can find me at Frantic Society on Twitter as well if you want to. I don't know why you would. How about you, Captain Drachma? Where can they find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at Captain Drachma, and you can, of course, find me in the Polymedia Discord, best place on the internet. Steve, where can they find you?
Twitch and Twitter as Blinkoom. It's Blink OOMM like Meat Boy. And you can find the podcast. Oh, why do I have this here in the plugs? You can find the podcast again at IndieQuest Pod. All right.
I don't know why I put that
time.
twice.
You know what? Double follow it. Well, actually, I guess if you click follow twice, you unfollow. So triple follow IndieQuest Pod on Twitter. Trav, of the many, too many places they can find you, which ones in particular would you like to point them to?
You can find me perving around in your neighborhood.
It's true.
I don't use Twitter anymore. You can find me on Instagram, though, at Trav Plays Games. You can find all of my output on polymedianetwork.com. If you're in the Southwest Virginia area, which is the armpit of Virginia, and which you'll be sad about when you get here, I'll make you laugh. You can come check out some comedy shows, which would be cool. So that's about it for me. Just podcasting and being goofy.
Well, since we're here, what's a show from the network you want to shout out specifically?
Have you guys heard IndieQuest? That's a good one. You guys should listen to that one. Polykill's great. That's a good one.
I agree.
Yeah, listen to that one. I will say, Tales of the Lesser Medium will have a new episode soon, and we're in the thick of some new Goosebumps, and we just wrapped up on Uncle Doug. So that should be all the shows I'm on, except for Drunk Friend, which is happening.
Sure.
Nice. Well, I think that's everything for the episode today. I'm pretty sure. Thank you so much, Trav, for stopping by, hanging out with us, rocking out with our meat out, like we always do.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you guys for having me on, and I hope to be back soon.
Test 1 2. Trav's goofing off like a goofball.
I was excited to see you guys. I'm excited to be on this podcast.
It's the first time.
I'm both offended that it took so long, but so thrilled that you waited until episode 69. So, mixed feelings.
I think it's all positive feelings. I think you know that this is exactly where you belong.
Mm-hmm. I think this is like the original idea. It was like Travis is going to come off for Super Meat Boy, and then 69 came around. So here we are.
All right, guys, I got an idea for a podcast. I'm thinking we bring Trav on in about 3 years.
Yeah.
Smart.
On episode
like
69. It's kind of like
your
it's like your Superman emblem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I might do a little Bryan Adams today. Was in episode 69. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'm here for it.
Episode 69.
I've never really looked at Seth's icon.
Me neither.
Is it someone eating a boot?
I think somebody's eating a Subway sandwich with a shake weight. Subway sandwich.
Or like a scarecrow's leg?
Oh my god, it is a scarecrow's leg.
Like he's biting right into the kneecap.
Wait, is this like a football thing? Is that guy supposed to be like a Lions fan chewing on a Packers leg?
Do you think there's any world where he found this icon any way other than just Googling strong man boot and just grabbed the first one that included both? He's like, that's me.
I am going to look up strong man eating a Green Bay Packer leg. Let's see what happens.
What if it's yeah?
Let's see what happens. What?
Nothing. Don't worry
Nothing?
about it. What's up?
We're talking about
I knew it was about
other
me.
stuff.
What's up
knew
with
it
you?
was about me.
How's it going? Where are you been?
I was here the whole time.
Then you can answer a question. Where's your image from? Did you just Google strong man eating a boot?
No, it's Dan Campbell, Lions, eating a Packers leg, and I
fucking knew that part.
But
Nailed it.
I got it from Alex.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah, it's less glamorous than you might have thought. I wasn't like on Rule 34 Lions page or anything like that.
Sure. Yeah.
Not that I never have been, but
Oh my god, look at oh my gosh. I was trying to find that picture just in the wild, and I had to Google strong man eating a Green Bay Packer leg. I didn't find that picture, but I did find these Minnesota Timberloins on this fella. Look at that. Whoo! I don't know if you have a pair of boots that could fit that man's legs.
that's AJ Dillon. Yeah, he's a monster. Although
Yeah.
he Has not done well this year, I will say. But
If you had to fucking walk around on elm tree stumps, I don't think you'd do well either.